There's probably not a day that goes by that you don't at least think about, what if I bought that STI? My opinion about the STI versus the WRX, even the new generation WRX, I still think stock power to 400 horsepower, the WRX is king. But anything above 400 horsepower up to, I'd say, 900 horsepower, even though I don't know why you would want 900 horsepower unless you were trying to set records, I do think that belongs to the STI. And let me explain why. If you're a VA chassis owner or a VB chassis owner, you'll know that there are some pretty big limitations to the FA platform. Now, the engine. Compared to the FA20, the EJ is a dinosaur, but I do think there are some principles about that engine that we can come to appreciate. And one of those things is the fuel system. Now, we all know port injection is better for racing. However, for fuel economy, it's not ideal. A lot of the reason why is because you don't have control over how much fuel is actually getting into the cylinder. Whereas the direct injection system, you can deliver a precise amount of fuel where you want it when you need it. As you start going higher and higher horsepower numbers boost, the direct injection system essentially maxes out. With that being said, to make high horsepower on a FA20, FA24, it's extremely expensive. One of the reasons why is without a standalone ECU, you cannot properly control fueling the way that you need to make high horsepower. Now, this is gonna hurt a lot of people's feelings, but you can ask any tuner out there, you can ask JR, you can ask Mikey, they're gonna tell you the same thing I'm telling you right now. To make high horsepower on the FA20 and FA24, you are going to need a standalone ECU. And now Motec ECU is not cheap. It's about $7,000. I mean, despite the fact it being a plug and play, there's a lot of back end stuff that you're gonna have to do. Some tuners don't tune on aftermarket ECUs. Some tuners are only Cobb licensed and certified. So that's something to consider. So that's one big difference. The other difference is the drivetrain. Now, I've seen a lot of high horsepower FA20s, and a common denominator between all of them is a STI swap. You get a limited slip differential, same symmetrical all-wheel drive, but you have a gearbox that is virtually bulletproof. If you look at beta builds, you'll know that these cars are capable of making high horsepower on stock drivetrain. I mean, it's been done. Now, STI swap is also not cheap. If you couple it with the Motec, you're looking at close to almost 20 grand, you know, between the 7K for the Motec and the 6 or 7K for an STI swap, and that's just purchase price. That doesn't include probably another 2 to 3K, maybe 4K for actual installation. If you're not gonna do it yourself, it's expensive. And then you also need to get a tune for the new gear ratios for your FA20 or FA24. You can't just slap it in there. I mean, you could, but you really need to get a tune to make sure everything is working as it should. There's a gear light indicator on the dash, and oftentimes you'll shift into fourth and it'll still say the car's in the third, or fifth and it'll still say the car's in fourth, and that's because of the gearing. So if you're a baller and you made it to this point, that's great. The other thing that's really the Achilles for these cars, the new generation VB and VA chassis, is rods and pistons. And the block itself is actually fairly stout. The cylinder walls are really beefy. However, if you're gonna do any kind of race application, I would say just go with a fully built block, you know, fully spec'd, to make sure that you protect your investment and you also maximize the performance of the chassis and what you're trying to accomplish on track. What I will say is rods and pistons, you can get away with that pretty easily. You can make, I would say, about 500 horsepower without having any problems. I mean, you could kind of do it on stock internals, but I wouldn't really push it that far. Rods and pistons, and push it to 500 horsepower, and that's what you're stuck at, unfortunately. Because of the location, and quite frankly an obscure location for the FA20 and FA24 architecture, you're really stuck with that turbo hanging down low, and it's optimal for efficiency, and you also have the equal length headers. However, it's not ideal for strapping on a larger turbo. I mean, a lot of the STI boys, a lot of the Subaru gurus, you can make some good power, but the big power guys are going rotated setup. So on the FA20, there is one kit, the ETS rotated kit. Now that is an extremely expensive kit as well. It's about $7,000. It allows you to fit a larger turbo in order to push more boost. Now, with all this said, what am I saying exactly? Well, what I'm saying is the WRX, as great of a platform as it is extremely expensive platform to push into the same numbers that you're pushing an STI. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Subaru is a rich man's game. I think Subaru, if you're looking to make some really high horsepower numbers going to the track, you're going to be spending a lot more money than people who drive BMWs, the LS boys, you know, American muscle. Like you're not going to be, I mean, even JDM, like you're not going to be on that same level without spending more money. And a lot of it's, one, it's because it's a 4-cylinder, it's an untraditional 4-cylinder. Just the overall architecture of the motor, the engineering behind it, it's not as efficient when it comes to making high horsepower. It's very much an economy car. I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, even on the rally stage for these cars, they're not making super high horsepower. They're maybe making 350, 400 horsepower, but it's all lightweight. So I'm really saying, if you get a WRX, be happy with the 400 horsepower threshold. And if you're not, prepare yourself to spend a lot more money and get made fun of for spending a whole lot more money to achieve the same horsepower numbers. And that's really what it is. I know I love Subaru, and I couldn't see myself not driving a Subaru. However, just it's the reality, guys. It's the money that you will spend on that WRX to get it to even surpass some of these cars with just downpipe tune. It's gonna be astronomical numbers, and the STI is really the best. Let me know what your thoughts are, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.